Hey, welcome in, folks. Great to see you on this Sunday evening. Update for you on a historic winter storm on the way for areas of the deep south from the Gulf Coast up through the Florida Panhandle, even. Gonna break some snow and ice records. Same story potentially for the Carolina coastline as we go into this week. But before we get there, already ongoing winter weather with a bit of a nor'easter working up the East Coast, bringing heavy wet snow to areas of Philadelphia, up into New York City, and eventually this evening further into New England. So I'm gonna break it all down for you in tonight's video with the latest model guidance and the latest data that we have. Now, if you haven't already, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications. Also, go ahead, comment, let me know where you're watching from, and give me any reports of what you're seeing out there, whether you're seeing snow or just that cold air that is slowly working on in. Alrighty, folks, let's go ahead and dive right on into the data here. And you can see already this is the latest European model from this afternoon looping next to me, showing that winter weather potential. You can see that ongoing nor'easter, and then that next winter storm beginning back into Texas, Louisiana, working through the Gulf Coast, again with a historic kind of scenario unfolding here, and then eventually even getting up into the Carolina coastline by Tuesday and into Wednesday. Now, this is brand new, latest from the National Weather Service. Brand new watches, warnings, and advisories up. Still ongoing winter storm warnings for the Northeast for our current winter storm and nor'easter that is tracking through. But check out what's happening down into the deep south, folks. Winter storm watches in effect through the Big Bend of Florida. Areas down near Perry, Florida that just got hit by a big hurricane over the summer, now under a winter storm watch. So just really insane stuff. Some areas getting their first winter storm watch in more than a decade. Other areas like New Orleans looking to break snowfall records that we haven't seen in nearly 20 years. For areas down very deep into the Gulf Coast. Houston going to get snow. It's just one of those kind of strange forecasts here that is shaping up to be quite interesting as we continue tracking this storm system. So definitely new and very important watches and warnings being issued as we get closer to the start of this event. Now, before we get there, though, let's talk about the Northeast, an ongoing winter storm here, and it's really just beginning for some folks. This is what radar will look like at about 6 p.m. tonight. You can see that shield of snow, already seeing snow out there in Philadelphia during the Eagles game. We've even got snow back out west from there towards Millersville and kind of even into the Harrisburg and State College area, seeing some of that winter weather, and up towards Scranton as well. Now, as we go through the evening, things are really going to pick up for New York City, into Long Island, Connecticut, northern Rhode Island, up into Massachusetts, that heavy snow beginning during the evening hours after the sun goes down, and even by the time we get late into the overnight, the down east areas of Maine seeing that snowfall, southern New Hampshire, portions of Vermont, and just much of New England in general picking up on that good snow that we haven't really seen a whole lot of this year in that I-95 corridor, but it's going to be good. Now, this is a quick hitting system, so it's going to be in and out of here, probably only one of those kind of 6, maybe 8-hour events in total. By the time we get to about midnight tonight, we're already done in Philadelphia, winding down in New York City, winding down in Boston by about 3, 4 a.m. And by the time everyone's waking up tomorrow at about 7 or 8, just about done with the snow in general, although lake effect will then pick up. You can see those lake effect bands beginning into upstate New York. And check out tomorrow afternoon, by the way, and tomorrow evening, heavy lake effect back out there into the Tug Hill, near Buffalo, into the state of Michigan, Ontario, seeing some of that lake effect, and all of that continues here even into Tuesday afternoon. So a very snowy time frame here for the Northeast, for just about everyone going to get at least some sort of snow here in this region. Now, talking about totals, because again, not for some folks, it's really just now beginning. Let's take a look at those totals. Now, most of the snow still to come is going to be up here into Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, back down into Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Some of the snow already has fallen back here into Philadelphia and northern New Jersey by the time you're watching this, but this area up into the Massachusetts area and kind of north of there, still a good 3 to 5 plus inches on the way. Some areas still going to get about half a foot of snow still, and I still think somebody kind of gets to that double-digit range, probably in and around 10 inches in that area of kind of just interior New England. Not quite I-95, just a little bit further inland from there, going to run the highest chances, and probably still a couple of inches to go here in Philadelphia and northern New Jersey, depending on when you're watching this. If you're watching this later tonight, you're just about done. If you're watching this right when it comes out, then more snow to come there, as you would kind of expect with these events that are ongoing at the time I'm recording. So that's kind of the snow up there. Now let's go ahead and really break down this southern winter storm, because we're kind of done with the northeast for now, but the southeast is just getting started, and it's all going to start here tomorrow afternoon. High temperatures, folks. You get the idea why we're going to see that winter weather potential. We've got very cold temperatures well down south, highs of only 28 or so near Little Rock. Same thing for Memphis, only about 24 in the Nashville area. Now, areas like this will not see snow out of this upcoming system, but you get to the areas that are high temperatures only near 40 into the Gulf Coast of Houston area, back down into New Orleans, Baton Rouge, southern Louisiana, and even into the Gulf Coast through the Florida Panhandle. Very low high temperatures tomorrow, and then you get to the low temperatures. By the time we're waking up Tuesday morning here, we're only in the 20s for most areas of Texas, Louisiana, all the way over to the Carolinas, lows in the teens into Columbia, South Carolina, back down towards the coastline of North Carolina. Yeah, it's going to be downright frigid right before that precipitation begins to build in, and obviously that's a recipe for some winter weather on the way. Now, let's very briefly kind of talk a little bit about the setup here and why it's a little bit of a complicated one for some folks. Now, this is our upper level energy map, and I'm going to pause it right here into Tuesday morning and afternoon. Now, an area that we feel confident in and has really not changed all that much in the forecast would be Louisiana, back down into the Gulf Coast of Texas, and kind of this circled area. We're still expecting a kind of historic winter storm down that way. Now, where the forecast has become difficult and a little bit more, more questions to be answered maybe, is into southeastern Virginia, coastal North Carolina, coastal Georgia, and down into coastal South Carolina. That's where the forecast has become much tougher, and I'll show you why. It all has to do with the upper levels here. So we're kind of running into a problem where it's a 1-2 punch. We have two separate pieces of upper level energy, and generally you would think that's good, but the way that these work, and I talk about it on my channel pretty often, if I draw a line through this piece of energy on the north, this right-hand side, that's the divergent side. That's where precipitation wants to form. And then the left-hand side, this is the convergent side. That's where precipitation kind of gets squashed down a little bit, and we lose some of that lift in the atmosphere. And watch what happens. The main driver for our precipitation is the southern piece. So what you want is this kind of area of lift right in here to move over you to get that winter weather. And we're going to get that easily over Louisiana, Texas, back down into the deep south, like I kind of talked about a second ago. But the reason the forecast gets difficult into the Carolinas is look what happens. We then get on the convergent side of our upper level trough here into the western Carolinas, especially trying to maybe get down to the eastern Carolinas. So by the time our lift is moving in from our southern system, it's running into a block of kind of sinking air in the mid levels. And that's what's making the forecast very tricky and difficult here into the eastern Carolinas, and really just the Carolinas, Georgia, and Virginia as a whole, compared to areas further west where we know we're going to have enough lift with that cold air for kind of one of those more record-like events, but now looking a little bit more like one of those nuisance events, maybe not quite as historic into the Carolinas compared to areas like Louisiana and Texas. And you can see that on the models pretty well. Now we'll start here into the deep south. We'll start through Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and talk about the snow here. This is Monday evening. I noticed that precipitation beginning to build in and running into that cold air. The latest high-resolution rapid refresh model here painting a real icy mess in the southern half of Texas here from Houston, even into southern Louisiana, really just much of the area. This is a higher ice threat than some other models have shown, so we'll see if this holds. But either way, it looks like a very big-time kind of icy mess into this region with an output like this. Now we'll move it even further ahead into time here, and eventually that snow takes over. That upper level cold air catches up, and we go from ice to snow in Houston, snowy scene here into southern Louisiana, staying ice down into South Texas, further down the coastline towards Galveston, looking like more of an icy threat here on this model. And this is as far out as it goes, but folks, check this out. Tuesday afternoon, high resolution rapid refresh model setting up a blockbuster winter storm for the southern half of Louisiana down into southeastern Texas, and just looking like an all-timer on these models. We'll switch it to the NAM so we can go a little further ahead into time, and you'll notice it's more of the same. It shows that big snow potential. This is Tuesday afternoon, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, the entire I-10 corridor of Louisiana, picking up on what would be a, not maybe once in a lifetime, but once in a couple of decade type snow event here down into this region, and then gets into Pascagoula, into the Mobile area, Gulfport, and even into the Florida Panhandle eventually. So with that said, how much snow and ice are we expecting? Well, this is a blend of models, I think, doing a pretty good job here with the snow totals, probably 1 to 3 into Houston, 1 to 3 into the New Orleans area, but you get along I-10 here back towards Baton Rouge, folks, someone in here could get half a foot of snow. Yes, in southern Louisiana, the swampy bayous could see half a foot of snow, and that is really just a historical proportion that we're just not used to seeing. So this is really one of those kind of once in a at least couple of decade type snow event, maybe once in a lifetime for some folks. Would not be surprised for this to kind of be one of those type events. It's just not something we see very often here in the models. And then the ice threat is there as well, lower than maybe that model showed in the blend of models here, but still an icy threat here down into southern Texas and along the Gulf Coast of Louisiana. Going to run into maybe a glaze up to a tenth, potentially up to a quarter of an inch of ice in some isolated places. And that's when things kind of get a little bit more treacherous once you pass that tenth of an inch and you get closer to a quarter of an inch of ice accretion. All right. Now let's move it to the tougher side of the forecast. I'm going to show you a couple different models here. Here's the NAM model. I'll move it ahead into time Tuesday afternoon. I think we're feeling pretty confident. Extreme southern Alabama, extreme southern Mississippi, into the western panhandle of Florida. Yeah, winter weather's looking pretty likely. Probably a mixed bag down near the Gulf. Pure snow to the north of there. Down here into the Auburn area. I think Talladega, Montgomery going to get some pure snow out of this. Probably won't really mix too much. And then another thing to note, as that kind of trough extends up the East Coast, we get some lift and could even see some kind of early precipitation beginning into Myrtle Beach, the Outer Banks, coastal areas of South Carolina, maybe some snow, sleet, freezing rain, kind of a wintry mixed bag working through Tuesday afternoon. That'll be a trend to watch and something I think that is pretty realistic given the setup. But then the real main precipitation moves in overnight Tuesday, southern Georgia, the Florida Panhandle. Again, one of those once in a decade or two type winter storm events, and then tries to get up into coastal South Carolina, folks. But the models just are not really super excited about it today. The trends have not been great for South Carolina or North Carolina. I still think we'll get snow or winter weather of some kind into the Outer Banks, back down into Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Beaufort, Tybee Island. This area, I still feel pretty good we'll at least get something. The area that I am losing some confidence in, and I think the models are also, is places like Augusta, Columbia, back towards maybe Fayetteville and Raleigh, areas like that. It's going to be a tougher ask to get winter weather compared to the coastal areas, and areas like Greenville, Spartanburg, Asheville, Blacksburg, Virginia, the northern suburbs of Atlanta, Huntsville, areas like that. This storm really just probably isn't going to be your storm, at least at this point. Now, could something crazy happen tomorrow in the models and we trend right back the other day and roar into a big winter storm into this area? It's possible, but it's just not very good trends today, and we would need big changes in the upper levels to support a bigger winter storm here once we get towards the Carolinas, but still expecting winter weather. And you can see that on the European model here, maybe a little bit better. And we'll move it ahead and a little more bullish with that snow. You can see that snow trying to get further inland into Columbia, back towards Augusta, Macon. So this solution very much does still exist, and then gets into the Outer Banks with a nice little winter weather event into southeast Virginia with some light snow for areas along the I-20 corridor and I-95 corridor. Sorry, just smacked my microphone. Points south and east, having the highest chance of seeing that winter weather in the Carolinas. So it's kind of just the flip script. Normally we're talking north of I-85. Now we're talking south of I-20 and I-95. And unfortunately, everywhere in between has kind of gotten the shaft so far this winter. We'll see if we can change that before the year is up. But definitely not the best for folks in areas like Charlotte and maybe portions of the upstate of South Carolina that got more ice than anything last week. This is kind of, a painful one to watch for sure, but we'll see. Maybe the trends change. Maybe we go back the other way, but they definitely were not great this afternoon by any means. Now, snowfall totals. This is the blend of models, and I think doing a pretty good job here. Now, this area right in here that I'm going to highlight, this is kind of a boom or bust area. This could go up significantly, or it could go down to basically nothing once you get into the Carolinas. But right now, I think a good swath of, we'll say 1 to 3. If I could draw 3, that would help. 1 to 3 plus inches of snow. going to be pretty likely in that area, and that could even get down into the Florida Panhandle. Check it out down here, a dusting up to an inch of maybe a sleet, snow, kind of ice mix, very possible. Higher end totals into southern Alabama, I think, where even spots of 2 to 4 inches could be possible in here, given the kind of trends we've seen in the models. Now, another thing I'll show you is let's kind of move this up the coast a little bit. The Outer Banks of North Carolina, Southeast Virginia. This is another area I'm watching, especially the Outer Banks. Could we get kind of a secondary area of low pressure to try to form and kind of juice up the atmosphere a little bit? I think that's possible. So I'm going to go kind of a 2 to 4 inch range in here. Again, I know the drawing is kind of crude here. I think there is that potential in that area. Then you get back towards Charlotte, Greensboro, Raleigh, Columbia. It's just such a tough forecast. If you're south and east of those areas by just a little bit, you have a much higher chance of getting winter weather than if you are in those cities themselves. But I still think you have at least a chance for some flurries, maybe even upwards to an inch or two of snow if this storm can overperform in a bigger way than the models are currently suggesting. Final thing I'll talk about here is ice potential, and not a big one for most of us, but if you're down here into the Panhandle of Florida, southern Georgia, this could be a big ice storm, maybe a 1/4 of an inch of ice, and like I said, that's more than enough to cause big travel concerns, power outages, and a very just kind of a messy situation in general. Alrighty, folks, that is all I've got for you. I know that was quick and kind of probably slipped up some words, but I got an Eagles game to get back to here. Only recorded about 15 minutes right at halftime. So hopefully I'll get back and the Eagles can pull this one out. But with that said, y'all have a great one. Stay safe, and I'll see you all next time.